Hey, what's going on, everyone? Thank you for coming to watch. So, guys, an update on a significant pattern change that is expected to bring some significant cold air into the northern United States over the next couple of weeks. We could be talking about some early snow for portions of the United States as we get into early November. We've got all the details coming right up. Right, so thank you for joining me here on this Tuesday evening. We have a lot to talk about in this video. We're going to be going over all those details on, again, this pretty significant pattern that we are expected to go into as we exit the last couple of days and weeks of October, and eventually as we get into November. Again, it's just about 10 days out from now, but there is a pretty strong hold that the models have kind of gotten on the fact that we likely will get a lot of cold air as we get into, again, early November. So we're going to be breaking down all of that in today's update. But as always, we start out here by taking a look at your current radar, and you can see that we have just a few things going on. One, we do actually have a surface low that's working its way across the Great Lakes region. You can slowly but surely see all these low pressure, all these showers and thunderstorms spin around that low pressure center. So we do have a couple of bands of showers and storms working their way across the Ohio Valley, especially up towards the Great Lakes. So some showers and storms down in the mid-Atlantic, up towards Ohio, portions of western Pennsylvania, as well as southern Michigan, northern Indiana. That's where we're seeing most of the rain tonight. Other than that, the rest of the country looks great. It's been a very nice day across the western United States, and the central United States also stays relatively dry and pretty warm here as we get into the beginning of this new work week. But if we take a look now at the National Weather Service forecast alerts, you can see that, again, we really don't have much going on. We do actually have some frost advisories going on for portions of northern Kansas, eastern Nebraska, western Iowa, and northern Missouri. So at times it will get fairly cold during the night, and you can see just in extreme northeastern Nebraska, we do actually have a few counties under freeze warning. So again, if we do actually see some of those temperatures dip below freezing, then we could be seeing some extensive crop failures. So make sure that you are, again, taking proper precautions for that. Just that you are aware of the fact that we likely will be talking about some pretty cold conditions. But you can see we do have some wind advisories for portions of northwestern Illinois and eastern Iowa, so some pretty breezy conditions out there. Other than that, once again, the country looks great, and we really don't have any other alerts to make mention of, so that just about does it. So we move on here to now the National Hurricane Center forecast page. We haven't looked at this in a while. Obviously, hurricane season has been very, very quiet. I mean, look at this. We're already in October. We're already at M. I mean, think about that. I mean, years past, we would be at this point in, like, September. But we now have newly formed Tropical Storm Melissa, which I believe formed last night, or a little bit earlier yesterday. As of right now, this is at a 50-mile-per-hour tropical storm, so minimum central pressure is at 1,003 millibars, which is relatively high for a mid to high-end tropical storm, but movement is pretty slow at 15 miles per hour, 13 knots to the west. So we're going to be tracking Melissa as it moves through the Caribbean and into the potentially into the Southwest Atlantic over the next couple of days. But once again, this is the latest from National Hurricane Center on Melissa. Alright, so if we take a little closer look here at Melissa on satellite, you can see she is starting to get her act together with lots of convection starting to develop around that center of circulation. You can see, again, lots of kind of circulating thunderstorms around that low pressure center. So it is a very unorganized system right now, but it is starting to get its act together, and soon enough it will likely intensify into a hurricane, potentially a major hurricane. But you can see Jamaica and Hispaniola up on the top part of your screen. This is how close the storm is to land, and you can see again, parts of South America and obviously just the entire coastal, or I should say coastline, just on the bottom part of your screen. So this storm is very, very close to impacting land, again, mainly due to how wide it is, but you are going to see some widespread impacts from this storm, both rain and wind. Alright, so this storm is going to look very different over the next couple of days, but it is just now starting to get its act together, again, just after forming. But if we take a look now at the forecast the forecast cone from the National Hurricane Center, you can see, again, we are expecting this to continue to move very slowly to the northwest, mainly as a tropical storm, really throughout the rest of this week. And as we get into Friday, watch how this thing slows down, alright? These forecast points, we have a lot of them. This goes all the way out until Saturday, and this storm barely gets anywhere. In fact, this cone is kind of so compact that it's actually, the cone of uncertainty is a full 360 like circle around the kind of the main forecast cone. So it's almost as if the National Hurricane Center is literally saying that this storm could go in any direction, which is very rare to see, this little confidence in a tropical storm and eventually hurricane path. But we are expecting the storm to move north, generally north, no matter kind of where it goes. And we are expecting it to end up somewhere around the southern coastline of Haiti or Jamaica, or somewhere in between potentially, right around 2 p.m. Saturday. So by Saturday afternoon, we are expecting this storm to make its way right into that area. And we already do have tropical storm watches up for all of Jamaica, and we do have hurricane watches up for the southern coastline of Haiti. So it is looking like we are going to see some direct impacts to, again, the Greater Antilles as well as Hispaniola, but I really do think that, we could be talking about some more slightly different paths than, what the National Hurricane Center is exactly forecasting here. But if we do see the storm take, a little bit of a more western track or even an eastern track, we could be talking about a very dangerous, potentially catastrophic situation. So we really want to make sure that we are, again, keeping a close eye on this one, because it really does look like this is going to be making a pretty direct impact on land, at least over the next couple of days. But we start out here by taking a look at the latest GFS. This is the 18Z GFS, and this is the latest it has for Melissa. Again, you can see it kind of goes in line with that northwest wobble, but it actually does completely turn the storm around, and at this point, already by Friday evening, it has the storm turning off to the northeast, which is a very weird kind of move that we see here. But the storm does deepen into the 980s there and makes a technical landfall on the Dominican Republic as a pretty much a high-end tropical storm, low-end Cat 1 hurricane, and then it kind of just slows down. I mean, it's a very slow-moving system, but it gets kind of pulled out to sea by what looks to be a trough or a surface low that kind of drags through the North Atlantic, and it does eventually re-intensify as it gets in the Southwest Atlantic to obviously a Cat 1, Cat 2, and potentially a Category 3 hurricane. We see this become a major hurricane, and then, I mean, really the rest is, the future is obvious with this. It goes right out to sea, but again, gets very, very strong there. So, I would say this is so far looking like one of the more best possible scenarios here, if that makes sense. Again, you can see with that northeastern track, if we do see something like that happen, that's going to limit the time for the storm to develop, which is obviously going to limit the strength, but also it limits areas that are impacted, and obviously just we see a much weaker system and actually moves a little bit faster than if it were to take a more western track. So really this is the best case scenario for all of us, and then it really it saves its strengthening part or time frame until it gets past this region back into the Southwest Atlantic and way out to sea. I will say the GFS has been absolutely locked in on this scenario. It has not changed anything. It has stayed the exact same really for the past week for this system. It's had a general track of, again, the storm going way out to sea and curving off to the northeast and not going, a little bit farther west towards maybe the U.S. and Cuba. So, again, the GFS is sticking, on the safer side with this storm and mostly bringing it out to sea again on the latest 18Z run. But we move things over now to the European model, and I'm going to give you guys a warning before we look at this. The European model has been very different and also has been locked in on its own scenario. So this is the latest European model. You can see that it continues to obviously intensify the storm. It has the storm moving a little bit more west and rather than northwest, but it does eventually slow this thing down. And watch how this thing completely, it runs to a complete stop. As we get into Thursday and eventually into Friday, this thing just does not move, and it sits just south of Jamaica. It's a very small storm system, but it does bring lots of rain into the southern coastline of Jamaica, and it sits there for several days. Okay, at this point, we're getting to the 25th. This is Sunday. This is Saturday into Sunday. Again, the storm stopped moving early Thursday, and now at this point, we're getting to Sunday. So that's like 4 days where the storm is completely stalled out again, basically just over the southern coastline of Jamaica, and at this point it's becoming a very strong hurricane. We are at 956 millibars. You're arguing that this is a Category 3 hurricane, very small storm, literally just sitting south of Jamaica, and at this point you are getting poured on if you are out there continuously, and it just continues to sit over the island, and eventually we're getting, into Tuesday of next week, and this thing goes bonkers in strength. It gets down to 942 millibars, which would bring this down to likely Category 4 strength, and it does make a direct landfall on really all of Jamaica here, and it likely would bring catastrophic impacts. And then once again, it makes a second landfall on the very eastern tip of Cuba. So once again, catastrophic situation, or kind of model output here from the European, which is, I'm going to say this is one of the most, concerning runs that we've seen really all week from the European model, but it has two major hurricane landfalls there, and eventually brings it out to sea. But this is one of the scenarios where, again, we see that sellout process right over Jamaica, which, number one, is going to bring likely significant to potentially dangerous flash flooding if you have, heavy rain for 4 days straight. You're also going to get, obviously, that strengthening period where you're going to get hurricane force, potentially major hurricane force wind gusts, and you're just going to get even more rain from more widespread areas, more rain and more wind, more waves. Okay, so that's why this run is very, very dangerous, potentially catastrophic. Obviously, this kind of shows us that we cannot rule out the chance of seeing a more high-end scenario in both direction and strength, where I really do think that we could be seeing the storm potentially go major hurricane status, again, in the worst-case scenario. Alright, so what about the Canadian model? Well, the Canadian also does align with the European model rather than the GFS, where it does bring the storm again mostly to the west, and then it does actually slow down quite a bit as it moves over Jamaica, but it really doesn't get its act together with the strength. It gets down to the 998 millibar range, and it kind of just slows down and stops pretty much a couple hundred miles, or really 100 or 2 miles southwest of Jamaica, so a little bit farther off than the European model, and it does allow itself to strengthen here into a 968 millibar low, likely Cat 2, Cat 3 hurricane as we get into Tuesday of next week. And instead of moving up through Cuba and Jamaica, it actually does go a little bit farther west and goes for the western tip of Cuba and eventually up towards the southeastern United States. So this is also a very concerning model run, but at this point you have a very strong hurricane on your hands that plows right into Cuba as a 960 millibar low. Again, you're just under 200 hours out, so take everything you see with a grain of salt. But this is a very concerning model run, and we do see likely very significant impacts with, again, Cat 2, Cat 3 strength hurricane going right through the center of Cuba, as well as the Bahamas there, and then eventually goes out to sea. But this thing gets very close to Florida to the point where you could actually be talking about some of those outer bands scraping the Keys, let's say here, again, if something like this were to happen. So very concerning trends here from the European and the Canadian, and this circle is kind of where they have the impact zones setting up, where kind of the Canadian and European also agree on what areas may end up being impacted directly by this system. And then finally we'll look at the HWRF model. This is the main hurricane model that we look at, and we get a more zoomed in look on Melissa, and you can see that the HWRF also does like the idea of the storm moving generally north-northwest, so a little bit farther off than the European, and the Canadian more aligned with the GFS, but it does not take that sharp turn out to sea, and it does actually begin to show that the stall process, or even, just the storm slowing down, but it does strengthen this quite a bit as it moves up towards, again, the southern coastline of Haiti. We actually do get this storm down into the 977 millibar range, and it really starts to slow down as we're getting into this weekend, and at this point it's down to 967 millibars. So again, this storm is becoming a very, very strong system, very compact hurricane, again, likely pushing Category 2 closer to Category 3 status, but very gnarly looking outer bands on the system. So looks like on this one we are shaping up for a pretty dangerous situation and outcome here, and that's pretty much exactly what happens. The storm continues to organize and rapidly strengthen. You can see the outer core get very close, I mean extremely close to the southern tip of Haiti, to the point where you're seeing well over hurricane force winds, and it actually does thread the needle between Haiti and Jamaica. But the run is not over yet. You can see Cuba is on the top part of your screen, and the run actually ends where we have a 957 millibar low pressure category 3 hurricane with literally a visible no precip eye on the model run here. We're getting lots of rainfall here from those outer bands on the Dominican Republic and Haiti, and then you have obviously this just absolutely destructive core and eye wall getting ready to impact portions of eastern Cuba. So this is a very dangerous looking model run. Again, aligning with both the Canadian and the European model on just a very dangerous situation outcome in general. So at this point, the GFS is an outlier, again, for showing the scenario that this storm would go farther out to sea, not really causing too much trouble other than maybe some tropical storm force winds and some heavy rain. The rest of the models all agree that this storm is likely going to go under some sort of rapid intensification as it stalls out right around these areas, and wherever it ends up, it may end up dealing a pretty significant blow. Again, it could be towards Cuba, it could be towards Jamaica, all the way out towards Haiti potentially. We really need to keep an eye on this system again because it looks to be a very potent one, and I really would not rule out the chance for seeing some very significant impacts. But this is what the simulated satellite would look like, again, if this scenario were to play out. Again, you can just see that absolutely mean eye there, a little bit more of a zoomed out picture. You can see, again, those outer bands would be lashing Cuba and the Dominican Republic, Haiti, as well as Jamaica. So, again, a very concerning looking model run with that. But if we look at an interesting graphic here from the Weather Prediction Center, I believe this is their official rainfall forecast from Tropical Storm Melissa, and you can see they are actually going pretty low here on the rainfall. They are likely what looks to be like, it looks like they're sticking with what the GFS is showing, where they actually don't have much rain falling, again, for those areas that at least the European model showed, where it actually only has Jamaica getting about 2 to 4 inches of rain. But you can see where the storm is expected to go, at least. They do actually have portions of the southern Dominican Republic receiving 8 to 12 inches of the rainfall, which, again, is very significant, don't get me wrong, but it's much less significant than what the European was showing, where in that scenario we likely would see upwards of 20 inches on the south shore or south-facing coastline of Jamaica. So two very different scenarios playing out here. But you can see really for the rest of southern Haiti and the Dominican Republic, we see kind of an average here of 6 to 8 inches, with some areas seeing closer to 8 to 12. And then really for the entire area, it looks to be about 2 to 4 inches at best, again, if you are going to be impacted directly by Melissa. So there's a lot to be figured out. This will be changing a lot over the next couple of days, but I really do think that that there are going to be some pretty significant flooding impacts from this storm, especially if it does take a little bit more of a western track, allowing it to have more time to rapidly intensify and potentially strengthen into a major hurricane. But now look at the GFS ensemble. We're going to be comparing the GFS ensemble and the European ensemble to give us an idea of where this storm is expected to go, again, with all of our 51 members. And you can see that the ensemble members are all over the place, considering that this storm is just about 150 to 200 hours out. You can see we have many members, again, taking this a little bit farther to the east. They do bring it through Haiti and the Dominican Republic, with most of these low-pressure systems, or centers, I should say, staying right around the 290 millibar range, which again brings us down to likely a high in Cat 1. But then we do see those stragglers out towards the west that do bring this much farther to the west towards Cuba, and a lot of these members are much stronger. We actually do get a couple members here that get below 950 millibars, which again is a very, very concerning signal there. And there even are a few members that take this completely, south of the region and doesn't even have that curve, the turnout process at all. So again, many different scenarios here. That's why you see all these spaghetti plots very spread out. You can see again, a lot of them going right out to sea, a couple of them going a little bit farther to the west, and then even a few of them not turning out to sea at all. So basically what we're talking about here with the GFS ensemble is that there's a lot to be figured out, and this is definitely going to have to tighten up in the next couple of days, but there is very little model agreement on where this storm is going to be going and even how strong it's going to get. And you can see that the same can be said for the European model, where we see almost an identical run here on the ensembles. Again, we do get many of the members to bring this mostly out to sea, but you can see a lot of them actually do bring this again into that kind of path where they go right in between anywhere from the far western part of the Dominican Republic all the way out towards Cuba. Again, this is where we are going to be talking about some potentially significant to also potentially catastrophic impacts, again, if we do get enough time for this storm to fully develop into a full-blown major hurricane. And at this point, we really can't escape a direct landfall, which is just going to cause even more problems. But very, very concerning looking ensemble run here from the latest European models. So we're really going to have to keep an eye on this one very, very closely over the next couple of days, because it really looks like some significant impacts are going to be likely here over the next couple of days. But I do want to move on here to the GFS model, take a look at the continental U.S. I do want to look at this upcoming pattern change that we are expected to go through, which could bring some pretty significant storm systems and potentially some snow into the northern U.S. And you can see we actually do get a pretty strong surface low down into the 993 millibar range as we get into a couple of days before Halloween. You can see we do see a secondary low pressure center form a little bit off to the farther off to the south, and that does usher in a very significant cold front. You get that 540 line all the way down into northern Texas, so this is bringing lots of Arctic air down into the northern United States, where we could be talking about once again a period of freezing temperatures there around the northern and central United States. But the storm continues to move off to the west off to the east, and you can see we do get what looks to be an instance of some potential severe weather. It doesn't look anything too crazy, but perhaps down into the Dixie Alley up towards the Ozarks and the lower Midwest, it does look like we could be talking about another instance of severe weather. So we'll keep an eye on this time frame here right around the 29th to the 30th, but it really doesn't look anything too significant as far as the overall trend. This thing has been on the downtrend over the past couple of days, but obviously we'll have to continue to watch over the next week or so again to see any model trends on how significant or more tame the storm can be. And then really after that, we get a lot of more robust cold fronts bringing more surface lows down into the northern United States, and we end off the run here. I know this is getting pretty far out, but we get a very significant cold front. I mean, this would be pretty much the most significant cold front of the year for us. We get very cold air going right into the northern United States, all the way from the Dakotas back into New England. So again, this would bring widespread freezing temperatures here and could potentially bring even some snow for, again, those very extreme northern areas. And then we end off the run with another low pressure system bringing even more colder air into the northern United States. So that is a pretty significant look there from the GFS. And speaking of those storm systems, the European model, this is its latest outlook here on rain. There is a very significant signal here for the south central United States to pick up on quite a few inches of rain. Again, you can see anywhere in those purple, reds, or even tan shades. This is where we're talking about potentially 2 to 4, maybe even as high as 6 inches of rain. Again, within now and the next 7 days, but really looks like portions of northern Texas and Oklahoma could get a significant amount of rainfall. Again, potentially over 5 inches of rain in some areas. We do see the upper Midwest receiving quite a bit of rainfall over the next couple of days, as well as the northeastern United States. So really, if you split the country in half, the eastern United States stays very wet and the western United States stays very dry. However, we are expected to see a potential train of storm systems out here in the Pacific Northwest, and that could also lead to some very significant rainfall totals. So I do think that once again, with this active pattern change, it could bring many storm systems into all parts of the country other than the southwestern United States, which will obviously lead to some very significant rainfall, especially in the eastern United States. And before we end off things, I do want to go to a Twitter post. I'm going to reference this. This is from Bam Weather on Twitter. all credit to them. They are noticing that there is a signal emerging for a busy start to winter, so this is going to be a long-range outlook here. But it is looking like we could be seeing a setup similar to the winter of 2010, which I don't know if you guys remember, but that was a very significant winter where I did see many record-breaking Arctic blasts dip into the northern United States. But it is looking like we are going to enter what we call a negative NAO phase, Northern Atlantic Oscillation, where we do see blocking high pressure set up north of the United States, and there would also be more high pressure out here in the North Atlantic, and that forces down much colder air into the eastern United States, which again would favor some more snowfall for really all of the Great Lakes region back into New England, as well as Mid-Atlantic, and potentially even down to a portion of the Southeast, again, really depending on how robust that cold air is. Once again, very, very long-range outlook. This is from the European Extended Ensemble, so take this all with a grain of salt, but this is not the only model that's been picking up on it. Again, this is the only model they reference in the post, but it is looking like we could be talking about, again, a pretty significant start to winter, so I would not be shocked if this is the only pattern, or if this is not the only pattern that we enter during this late fall and early winter, where we actually do get many shots of cold air to come into the United States as a result. But if we look at the GFS temperature anomalies, you can see the latest 18Z GFS does have a pretty significant cold front, bringing some well below average temperatures into the western United States, which would eventually push all of that warm air out of the east, and that is exactly what happens. And then as the run ends, we get a much more significant cold front to move in, and that's the one that we were talking about earlier, again with well below average temperatures reaching all the way down into the Gulf Coast. Alright, so that's kind of the video. I hope appreciate all of you for tuning in. I hope you guys had a great day. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure you leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and yeah, that's pretty much it. So if you have to watch, and I'll see you guys in the next video.